This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Wednesday, December the 17th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's produced the program. Let's get it going. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 86. 26, so here we are, another chilly December day, so let's talk a little tennis. Just last week, the International Tennis Federation named their 5 future stars, and one of them was 19-year-old Toronto native Victoria Mboko. Now, she's also been named by the WTA, the World Tennis Association, as the newcomer of the year. Pretty impressive stuff. So we all harken back to the summer in August when she won the WTA 1000 National Bank Open in Montreal. Huge event. Defeated 4 Grand Slam singles champions during that tournament. Also beat 4-time major champion Naomi Osaka in the final. Her first victory on tour. And then she went on to back it up with a win in Hong Kong. So look out for Victoria Mboko into the future. Okay. So let's get into this one. No good can come of it, but hey, let's go. All right, certainly there's lots of relationship between this province and Alberta. So many people who are living here but make the long distance commute to work in Alberta. I lived in Alberta. Plenty of people from this province have moved to Alberta. And the politics of Alberta are interesting. Okay. Skate Canada. Skate Canada, of course, in charge of figure skating events in the country. They are no longer going to host major events in Alberta. And that's all about legislation regarding the participation of transgender athletes in women's sport. Okay, so they certainly have the ability to do it. The culture war business is tedious, but let's dig into it because it is part of the public discourse and it's an important conversation. Okay, so there's a few things to this. For me, we talk about government getting involved in things where they don't belong, and this type of legislation regarding sport is just, talking about what is maybe 1% or less of the Canadian population, but it gets a lot of traction and it gets a lot of attention. So there's a few things to this. Number one, as far as I'm concerned, we should leave it up to the sports bodies to talk about who can and cannot participate in whatever level of sport. Skate Canada has already adopted the rules about transgender athletes. The International Olympic Committee is currently looking at the process of reviewing its definition of female sports. But here's one of the key issues, as far as I can tell, is you talk about an unfair biological advantage for someone who's born male, who has transitioned to being a female or identifying as a female to participate in female sport. The facts are, if it was that dominant biological advantage, then these athletes would win all the time. But the fact of the matter is they don't. There's still plenty of research going on in the medical community as to whether or not there's a distinct advantage for someone born male identifying as female competing in female sports. Remember back in the Paris Olympics, there was this one athlete in the boxing competition who was born male, competed as a female at the Olympic Games, didn't win. And we see this stuff all the time. And look, I know the culture conversations get an awful lot of attention, and they do attract voters to one political ideology or another. But Skate Canada says they will no longer hold any national or international events in the province of Alberta. That does not mean Alberta skaters are prohibited from participating in Skate Canada sanctioned events. But anyway, I just thought it's worth mentioning because it's a extremely tricky conversation, but that's the ruling that's been made by Skate Canada. And I do think those rules belong in the hands of governing bodies of different sports as opposed to the government. Now, we can talk about things like that have been proposed legislation in different provinces about if and when a child in school chooses to use a different pronoun of all things, and then they have to inform the parents. Maybe between the parents and their children, they can have those types of conversations at home. But anyway, certainly no good can come of that. But let's talk about it. Okay, so yesterday, the anticipated fiscal update coming from the new Finance Minister, Craig Party. And he refers to the province's financial bottom line as deeply troubling. And we all knew that. So now the projected deficit has grown to $948 million, up from the last projection we heard in the budget 2025 of $626 million. Okay. So they talk about structural changes and the time it will take. You know, and then the reference to the big tobacco settlement money that was included in the deficit, which really kind of masked where we really were. But the issue there is, everybody knew that already. That's no surprise. We've talked about it extensively on the show. The government of the day, the Liberals at the time, were absolutely able to do this. Other provinces chose a course of bit of protect their backside by asking their respective auditor generals to chime in on how they should proceed with including that money. And we know to use it all up front, even though a fraction of it has actually been paid, and it won't be paid out over the course until the course of 30 years. But we already knew that was part of the deficit. So they look into, and on the bright side of it, they look at economic growth projected in 2026. The forecast is for 5.3% economic growth in this province, which is scheduled to lead all provinces. That is good news. Whether it be more activity in the mineral sector, more activity in production in the oil sector, higher consumer spending, and some of these forecasts you can take them with a grain of salt. So what does this mean for pledges and promises made on the campaign trail? So they talk about and continue to talk about tax cuts. People will see and hear these numbers and think that possibly there are other cuts coming, which are not tax cuts. Then things like building 4 new ferries, increase healthcare spending to improve the healthcare system, and up and down the line. But I don't know how surprised anyone could or should be with this. But then you talk about things like, you know, specific pledges on the campaign trail, whether or not they can follow through, given what they say is a new to them number of deficit. All right. And then the things like smart spending. I really don't know what that means. But it's pretty important detail for us to be able to flesh out as to what smart spending constitutes. So I'll leave it up to you to bring forward your opinion on what you thought about the update yesterday. But we'll remember, you know, so there was some unforeseen spending last year, but kind of small numbers when we talk about the deficit at the potential for $948 million, like the Liberals will talk about, well, we spent $27 million on wildfires last year. Yeah, but we're talking about just about over $300 million additional dollars in the world of deficits in this province. But I'm not so sure I learned a whole lot yesterday. No one can be too surprised with the numbers that have come out, but it would be nice to know how those numbers jibe with promises made. And we do know we have systemic and structural issues in this province regarding deficit and debt. Of course we do. But none of that is real big earth-shattering news. At least it wasn't to me. But if you want to take it on, we can absolutely do it. And I think there's still going to be plenty of conversations regarding the newly chosen path for the government to assess the merits of the Upper Churchill MOU. Okay, so we are flooded with MOU and referendum conversations in this country, and certainly plenty of them on the go in this province. So whether it be MOUs regarding onshore wind and green hydrogen and ammonia for export, MOUs regarding the Upper Churchill and Gull Island, and up and down the line. But let's get into it a little bit. So when the Liberal government, after announcing last year that we have indeed entered into a memorandum of understanding with Quebec, people understandably question the appointment of Dennis Brown to be the chair. Not that Dennis Brown doesn't have the qualifications, but the fact of the matter is Mr. Brown called it a good deal before the panel was struck. I think the same conversation is happening now about the inclusion of Michael Wilson, who has been very generous with his time and information on this program, but he has also made a declaration about the MOU. He says it's a disaster for the province. Now, I suppose he was convinced to accept an appointment to this panel, given the broader scope and mandate of this particular 3-person appointed panel, because it was very narrow with the last structure of the independent panel. So I don't think that's unfair to wonder aloud that if people have already said and stated their position on the MOU, what can actually change inside this expanded scope? And then, look, I get absolutely browbeat when I have anything to say about the referendum. Okay. Just from my own perspective. So we go through this exercise, which was once 60 days, and now it's going to be 4.5 months, and a report due by the end of April of 2026, then to be publicly disclosed, then to be debated in the House of Assembly, then to be crafted into some sort of referendum question, and then who knows what. The question I would have is, regardless if people would vote emotionally, let's just look down the path. If this independent review comes back and says this is a bad deal, then why vote on it? If they come back and say this is a good deal, then why vote on that? So isn't this exercise intended to give us the final thoughts on whether or not we should proceed on the pathway to definitive agreements? Even that said, wouldn't a referendum after the contracts are actually proposed or tabled, all the term sheets are there to be understood and discussed and debated in the House of Assembly, as opposed to what we are not understanding about the pending negotiations or the stalled negotiations? So I think there's still a lot of meat on that bone to discuss, and stick with referendums. You know, I hear Francois Legault, the Premier of Quebec, in the news talking about the fact that his party, the Coalition de Avenir, is polling so terribly, and they look like they might get wiped off the map, political map. Then the Liberals under Pablo Rodriguez, they're struggling mightily. Calls for him to step down as leader, former federal Liberal cabinet minister. And then you look at the Parti Québécois. They're proposing a referendum. Legault's assertion is that that may turn away some voters and consequently hamper the Parti Québécois' opportunity to be the government in Quebec. And it's a lot of who knows what into the future kind of stuff there. And then I'll throw back out there referendums in Alberta, because we've got a built-in relationship with Alberta for obvious reasons aforementioned. It sounds like a terrible idea to me for a variety of reasons, but between referendums and political unrest and the unbelievable nature of political discourse and MOUs up and down the line, including MOUs of pipelines from Alberta to the BC North Coast, there's a lot there. If you want to take it on, let's do exactly that. All right. Just about every time that there are prolonged problems with Marine Atlantic pending weather, not about mechanical issues or scheduling or any of those things, but anything in Marine Atlantic we can talk about. But every time that we see a week like this where there have been a bunch of cancellations because of the weather, inevitably I get a bunch of emails from pretty much the same group of people about, doesn't this paint a very clear picture for the need for the fixed link? I suppose you're not wrong when you say that when there is a problem with getting the transport of goods across Marine Atlantic for days on end, and of course they're trying their very best to clear up the backlog, and some 300 commercial vehicles have indeed made their way across since the first storm-related interruption. I do find the fixed link an interesting conversation, and every time the email is sent about it, they say, does this not belong in the major projects office? Fair enough. Whether it be the Churchill River issues regarding major project office, fast tracking and approvals, potential financial assistance, same thing with the fixed link. And it's not because I think so, because the Liberal government has said exactly that in the past. The fixed link in the hand of the Canada's Infrastructure Bank as a nation-building project. People may opine that Beta Nord belongs in that exact office as well, even though we don't know exactly how that's going to work. And many of the projects that have been announced were already pretty advanced and had been approved for quite some time. So I think there's plenty of questions to be asked about the projects that did get included in the major projects office. And if you want to get into the most recent numbers as brought forward by Arup, a consulting company, after work has been done in 2004 by Hatch Engineering, then was updated in 2018 and now updated again in 2023, which does not paint a very rosy economic or financial picture regarding the possibility for the fixed link, but we're happy to talk about it here on the program, and I do think it remains an interesting conversation. Couple of things. So there's another new scam going around. Man, it is absolutely relentless. And at this time of year, any opportunity to maybe get a few extra shekels in your pocket, people may be enticed to press that one button or click on that link. And unbeknownst to them, then they're in trouble. So this one is going around asking for people's personal information so they can receive a senior's bonus. And it says it's coming from the Premier's office. It's not a thing. It's not real. It is a complete 100% scam. But you know, people, especially if you're struggling and there's any opportunity to get some sort of bonus or rebate or a few extra dollars, then people are going to be really tempted to click that link, but please do not do it. It is absolutely a scam, and the government does not operate like that, regardless if you trust them or not. So anyway, there you go. Had a call yesterday talking about the volume of calls we get on this program and the volume of calls this person in particular receives, Tom Badcock at the Hub, about the glaring need to finally establish a disabilities advocate's office. There's no doubt about it. And yes, I understand the government's still relatively new, but it has been a key pledge, and they talked about some $2 million in the first year to establish a disabilities advocate. So that's a conversation that is certainly welcome here on this program. And just a couple more before we get to you. All right. Education. So it's the final week of the 2025 calendar year in the K-12, or I guess the pre-K-12 system. So there's so much we can talk about in school, and you know me, I think education deserves more conversation. But even over the past weekend, and you know, I do think we've abused the word bullying, because there's a long way between bullying and harassment and an actual physical assault, which is a crime. But there was two separate stories that I saw being shared over the course of the weekend, and one was absolutely outrageous and heartbreaking. Leave the school out of it, because I'm not even 100% what school we're talking about here. But this young girl and her bully, the nuisance in her corner year over year, took the time and the effort to sit down to draw a very disparaging, ugly picture. Then went on the second page to really hammer on this girl about her looks and her ability and her smarts, or the lack thereof, and it was disgraceful. Absolutely unbelievable that someone would take that kind of time. Kids are going to be kids, and there's going to be some name calling in the playground and those types of things. But this example that was shared far and wide was way over the top, extremely hurtful. And of course, that's just not hurt that you'll experience for the few minutes that you read it, but that lingers. And it permeates throughout the student body. You know, other kids who are not on the receiving end are very timid and quiet, thinking, man, I hope I'm not next. The question I would have is, what gets done about this? Because yes, there's going to be some quote-unquote innocuous, relatively innocent bullying that, you know, you can have teachers speak with the student, and hopefully they can come to some sort of understanding about the hurt that they're perpetrating. But when it gets to that level, that extent, and I'm not going to bother reading out some of the vile comments made about this young fella, by this young fella, about this young girl, is how do you bring the parents into the fold here? Because it's not good enough to simply take that kid out of the classroom. Unfortunately, what happens more often than not is that the child on the receiving end gets all the attention and may be pulled away from the what we call a bully, but it's really a menace. Is do you just automatically bring the parents in? Get some level of accountability for the family, for the caregivers, for the mom, for the dad? Because a lot of these behaviors are learned at home, or they're accepted or ignored at home. But the potential lifelong impact, and that might not be lifelong for kids who are on the receiving end of some of this atrocious behavior when they're young, but it does stick. And of course, if that manifests itself into not even wanting to go to school, because if you don't want to be there, it's going to be difficult to absorb the curriculum. It's going to be difficult to socialize like a normal kid. So that kind of stuff, man, when I read it, and I unfortunately took the time to read it all, it was horrendous. It really was. And I'm sure folks who are on my social media feeds, they know exactly what I'm talking about, and it was despicable. So if you want to take it on, we can do it. Oh, I've been asked to put forward questions about what's the status of the snow crab rebate. I have no idea. I know it was going to some form of expedited arbitration. What the end result of it has been, I really don't know what the status of it is. And so someone asked me if I could put it out there, but I don't know the answer. Last one or two. So we've been talking about the story of Dr. Neil Patterson, who signed a 2-year contract to work in a family care team on the province's west coast. Incentives offered were up to $200,000. He has not been paid. He doesn't even know who to go to speak about this. He's been told by NL Health Services to not talk about it in the media, but of course the straw has broken, and he is talking about it. And he's going to join us on the program sometime pretty soon here this morning. In addition to that, we talked about the numbers out, looking at the number of homicides in this province over the course of the last decade. And in and around half are a result of domestic violence. 14 of the 53 murders were perpetrated by someone who was intimately involved, a partner of, or married to the victim. It's an unbelievable, staggering number. And how that conversation is best handled, probably I'm not the best person to do it, but our first guest this morning, Janet McNaughton, is going to be probably a really important voice here. She's an intimate partner violence reform advocate. We'll hear from Janet, then we'll speak to Dr. Patterson, and then we're going to speak to you. And the topic is entirely up to you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's begin this morning on line number one and say good morning to Janet McNaughton, an intimate partner violence reform advocate. Good morning, Janet. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thank you very much for having me.
Happy to have you on the program. This story just continues to grow with intensity and heartbreak every time we get a new update or a new story, whether it be about the amount of murders that have happened as a result of domestic violence. And there's a new report out now from Act Now. Where would you like to start? Because I do struggle with this conversation, I'll be honest.
Well, the report isn't from us. It was commissioned by the Council of Atlantic Premiers, and it's called Preventing Domestic Homicides in Atlantic Canada, Looking Back to See Our Way Forward. So I was really excited about this report. Now, the actual report is mainly about the need for better data collection, which is really boring, and I'm not a numbers person. But there are some things there that are really useful. There's a snapshot of each province in Atlantic Canada and where they are. And when it comes to Newfoundland and Labrador, it says, and this is a quote, "Presently, there is no provincial strategy addressing domestic violence in Newfoundland and Labrador." Okay, and I know this from my own personal experience because my friend was murdered. And when she came out of the shelter, we got no support because there was no support. And the thing about domestic violence, IPV murders, is that they are preventable. And not very many kinds of murders are preventable, but they're preventable because they follow a pattern. Most domestic violence goes up and down, up and down, up and down. You know, it builds to a moment when there's violence, and then there's a honeymoon period after, and that's all that happens. But in about 1 in 4, it escalates towards homicide. Now, it doesn't usually get to homicide. Often women manage to leave their partners before they are killed, you know, or something happens to disrupt it. But we know that there are predictable patterns because this has been studied for a long time. And I just want to let your listeners know, if they want to know more about this, about, you know, how are their patterns and how is this preventable, they can go into a computer search and put in the words The New Yorker, which is a magazine, and then a raised hand. Okay, and that article, A Raised Hand by Rachel Louise Snyder, details how they discovered that domestic violence murders are preventable. And it's fascinating. It's a true crime story. So what do you need? So in Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, when women come out of shelters, they have support. Now, shelters are terrific. They really are. But nobody is intended to live in a women's emergency shelter. And that is what's happening here. Women are living long-term in the shelters because they're afraid to come home. My friend was so brave, you know. And so what do we need when women come out of shelters? So there's two things. The first thing is there has to be a way to prioritize high-risk cases so that everybody knows where to put their resources. And that's what we found. We had no way of letting anybody know what a serious situation this was. So in this province, the day before someone is murdered, you can go to the police and say, she is going to be killed, and they will say, I'm sorry, we've done everything we can for you. And that happened. Okay, so what needs to happen? And the first thing is you have to be able to prioritize the high-risk cases, so there are risk assessment tools that have been used in different places. Now, the RNC will tell you that they have a risk assessment tool, ODERA. So when they do a risk assessment, what happens? And that's where there's a vacuum, okay? In Prince Edward Island, they have this program called, well, they have two things. They have ankle monitors for people on probation and bail who are charged with intimate partner violence. Not exclusively, but it is used for this. So when the courts see, and there's a lack of education here, so one of the main risk factors, one of the big red flags, is when you see a charge of strangulation on a court docket. So a man who has strangulation on his court docket is more than 7 times more likely to murder his partner. And we know that. And in 2024, the criminal code was changed so that judges are allowed to take intimate partner violence into account when determining conditions of bail. Okay, but it's very hard. Judges insist on being independent, and they will educate themselves. And we really need more education for judges. We need more education for judges so badly that there is a judge in the provincial court on the West Coast named Wayne Gorman, and he recently said in a judgment, this is a quote from him, "Why are release orders so spectacularly unsuccessful in protecting women from their intimate partners when those partners are charged with assaulting them?" Okay, so if you see strangulation, there are other risk factors. They're kind of, they don't seem as important. If a man is unemployed, that's a risk factor. If there are addictions, that's a risk factor. There's some pretty strange ones. If a woman has children from a previous partner, that's a risk factor. So you put all these risk factors together and you try to determine which women are most at risk. In Prince Edward Island, when a woman leaves a shelter or her ex-partner is coming out of jail, a time of high risk, because we can identify these times of high risk, okay, and they are when a woman leaves her partner, when she gets a new partner, when she files for divorce, when the person who assaulted her comes out of jail. We know that these are high risk times, and for about 6 months after that's when you can expect the murders to occur. And it has been proven if you can provide women with the support they need at those times, you can reduce your homicide rate. So why aren't we doing this here? In Prince Edward Island, there's a program called Circle of Support, and a woman tells people what she needs. So maybe she needs, someone. Maybe she's worried that the person who assaulted her is going to come to her workplace. So maybe his photograph needs to be circulated to everyone. Maybe they know that if they see that face, they need to call 911 right away. So women get to determine what they need. And Prince Edward Island hasn't had an intimate partner violence homicide for a decade now. The last one was in 2015. So they have ankle monitors, and they have this support for women who are coming out of the shelter, which has proven to be effective. And we really need that sort of thing here. So these are easy things. We're not talking about expensive programs. We're not talking about a lot of money. We could bring someone from Prince Edward Island. There's a woman in Prince Edward Island who went to Edmonton to show them how to do this circle of support. And we could be doing this so that when women feel that they can leave shelters, that they can live normal lives, and that they have some confidence that somebody's got their back.
I mean, the province has talked about expanding the ankle monitoring program, which they should. It's been talked about for far too long without being implemented. Clare's Law, I think, is a helpful step forward. How should, we're talking about reverse onus to get bail, and we do know that when someone finally comes forward to file a formal complaint with law enforcement and the person accused gets bail, that amps up and intensifies the potential for higher and more severe violence. So we all understand these things to be true. So on the world of bail, what can be done here? Because an ankle monitor and a piece of paper that says you can't go within X number of meters of one person or another is not really that valuable if someone is, intent on causing harm or possibly killing their partner. So how do we actually approach that bail question? Or is it simply an automatic denial of bail if one of the charges is strangulation? Or how should we be talking or thinking about that?
That would be a start, and if you go into the court docket and you put, what's the term, when they violate their bail, the term is gone. But anyway, about how,
a breach of conditions, yeah.
Breach. If you put breach in a search term and then you run the docket for any day, you get, 50, 75 charges. These people are continually breaching. And so an ankle monitor actually does help. In Prince Edward Island, they've had the ankle monitor since 2015. One man tried to serious assault on his partner. The ankle monitor has a siren on it. The siren was triggered because they could see from the GPS monitoring that he was going towards the apartment building where his ex-partner lived. They triggered the siren. He ran away and got in his car. They caught him because they could track him. So ankle monitors can be very effective. But the other thing is that men who have a strangulation charge really shouldn't be out on bail, because we see over and over again that, when when you look at their court dockets, there's just breach after breach. Mm-hmm. And each time it's the same victims. So the woman gets re-victimized. She's constantly looking over her shoulder. There are other things that can be done with GPS monitoring. They can put an exclusion zone around the woman's house and workplace, around the children's school. They can also have a mobile exclusion zone so that if they see the man's ankle monitor coming towards the woman wherever she is, they can alert her. So ankle monitoring would be a start. It costs about $14 a day. That's a lot lower than incarceration. It would allow men to continue to work if they have a job, So, and it's not a violation of their rights because the alternative is incarceration.
I know we have a keen focus on the criminal justice system when we talk about this, but I wonder, should we do a better job in including different departments like education and healthcare in this conversation? Because to me, it seems like those two other departments could play an active and meaningful role as opposed to simply talk about criminal justice.
Yeah, education is a really, really hard one. I knew that my friend was a victim of intimate partner violence, but if I had gone to child protection, there was a risk that the children would be removed from her home. And that was the only thing I could think of that would make her life worse. So as far as education goes, it's a very, very fine line that people have to walk in the education system. You don't want to trigger anything that drastic, but viewing domestic violence is regarded as a form of child abuse in this province. So there's that. Now, as far as the healthcare system goes, there is a need for greater recognition of strangulation because some of the signs of strangulation can be pretty, subtle. So, for example, a woman has a hoarse voice, or she's coughing a lot, or she's got damage to her eyes, and so healthcare professionals have to be taught to identify strangulation, and I believe it's now a reportable injury like a gunshot wound, so there is real room for improvement there. And one of the people in my committee, Olivia Lynch, who's the executive director of Violence Prevention Avalon East, recently went into the School of Nursing and talked to them about strangulation. The police in Ottawa got special training in strangulation. So it is something that needs to be identified because that is a real red flag.
No question. Janet, I really appreciate making time for the program this morning. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Take good care.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Obviously, that's a tricky conversation, but we've got to have them. The numbers are clear. The court docket is patently obvious. All right, we've been talking about Dr. Neil Patterson here for the last couple of days here on the program. He's got an interesting story, but it's also a cautionary tale for the province. Dr. Neil Patterson right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Dr. Neil Patterson. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for making time for the show.
Well, thanks for talking about me. It's I really appreciate the advocacy and support that you've been talking about throughout the week.
Yes, and take this for how it's intended. This story is even bigger than you. If we have more doctors in your circumstance, your predicament, who are considering leaving because of things like not getting paid as per contractual arrangement, this is a big potential problem for the province. Bring us back to signing your initial 2-year contract here. What made you do it, and what's been the outcome?
Yeah, so I think, anybody that's been listening is probably aware by now that I'm actually from Ontario. And so I moved out here in part because my brother was a medical student here at the time. And so I completed the last part of my training here, my residency training here in the province. And I fell in love with the area. There's lots of lovely physicians. There's lots of excellent nurses in the area. It's a good place to work. And so when I was made aware of these bonuses, incentives, I was quite happy to try and pay off a chunk of my student loans and stay and work in the province for a little bit.
And then, of course, there was incentives to work as part of a primary care team or a collaborative clinic, whatever people want to call it. And then they're splitting hairs saying, well, because you're not deemed to be a full-time salaried provider in a family care clinic and you've shared some of your time with emergency rooms and hospitals, they say that now potentially that removes you from the access to this incentive. Who asked you to cover some of the shifts at the hospitals in the ER?
It's the same people who are setting up these contracts, right? So it's the Newfoundland Health, the NLHS, or the Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services Department, so a branch of the government, if you will. And so I think it's important to emphasize that, like, quite clearly in my contract, it includes all of these responsibilities at the hospital. So my time in the ER, my time in the operating room, my time looking after the inpatients and covering the chemotherapy patients, all of that is quite specifically listed in my contract. So I'm not really doing anything that's outside of what is covered, and I'm actually fulfilling exactly what my contract entails me to do.
It goes on in the story to say that you're not even sure who to speak with at NL Health Services about this issue. Have you since figured that out, or has anybody reached out since this story has been in the news?
I don't think that there's one specific person that's responsible for this. It seems to be a group of people, and I'm not even sure if they know themselves. But now it's all through the lawyers, and so I'm having minimal communication with them, and it's coming from their legal department to my legal team, and so my direct communication with them is kind of at a halt, so to speak.
Amongst your other doctor colleagues here in the province, now that the story is out, we've heard from Dr. Cynthia Slade, who's the president of the NLMA, the Medical Association, that you're not alone. Have you heard from other doctors in a similar circumstance?
I have, actually. It's been an outpouring of support from hundreds of colleagues and around Canada, actually, not just within the province. So it's been lovely to receive words of support, but also I'm hearing more and more stories that this isn't an isolated issue. Like you said, more people are coming forward and telling me about their experiences with NLHS and who've been in very similar situations, struggling to get paid. And people even before signing their contracts are having such a tough time starting and signing to become working here that they're leaving the province before they've even started. So exactly like you said, it is a little bit larger of an issue than me, and it affects the public. So
what's your stance now? You've said you're going to fulfill your contract, but are you steadfast on the fact that if you don't get this money, you're going to leave? Or even if you do get paid, you're still going to leave? What's the plan?
Well, I'm frustrated. I think that I deserve an apology. It's something that should have been a brief email or a phone call a year ago. This isn't something that started a week ago, and I'm here chatting to you today about it, right? This has been ongoing for a year, where I've been battling, beating my head off a wall trying to get what I signed for and what was agreed to. And so I won't quit. I wouldn't. I want to fulfill my end of the bargain. I feel like I have an obligation to the community and to the province, and I enjoy my job. There's a lot of great aspects of it. I feel like I'm making a difference in people's lives, but in the end, I do feel like I would have to put my foot down. If I'm not being paid by the government, then I can't continue to work here. It wouldn't be sustainable for me when I have job offers in other provinces.
How do you think this story is heard by current students of medical schools around the country, or other doctors considering moving possibly to Atlantic Canada or to this province in particular? When they hear these types of things, how do you think that resonates?
I think it's absolutely being heard by medical students and residents across the country, and especially within the province. It's a very close, tight-knit community, and there's not a lot of doctors, and most people in the community can attest to that. There's not enough doctors, and so we know each other. We talk. It's a small circle, and so word travels fast, and it definitely impacts people's decisions for where they choose to practice. An anecdotal story, but a true one, is my brother is a resident physician here in the province right now, and he's in the process of completing his studies, and he's not eager to sign on for bonuses that he won't get. So, that definitely impacts people's decision-making process. We graduate with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and many times much later in age than other people starting their careers. And so we have to make some headway on that, and finances are definitely part of the decision.
Just on a broad stroke conversation here, I know this province has entered into the Atlantic Registry, given the ability for doctors to work in different provinces in Atlantic Canada. The whole concept now of national accreditation or licensing, pardon me. I've never understood why there's a different set of circumstances with the College of Physicians and Surgeons in BC or Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, or here. Is it time for this national license to be part of the issue? Because for doctors, even wanting to work a locum, the time, the effort, the money to try to do the right thing just puts up a barrier that many doctors say it's not worth it. Is it time for a national license?
I I would say absolutely, and I think that most physicians would agree. And you're correct. It can be days of paperwork to do a locum in another province, or sometimes even within another area of the province. And so I think most physicians are on board with that, and it would certainly make it easier for people to transfer provinces. But when you are dealing with such a headache here, then maybe it's worth dealing with the headache of moving somewhere else.
Dr. Patterson, I really appreciate you making time for the program. I do hope this makes its way into the heads of the decision makers at NL Health Services to get this rectified, because it might not just be you, it might be another handful of doctors. That's the last thing we can suffer, is doctors leaving because contractual obligations have not been met.
I think that most of the public is in agreement with that. I think that people appreciate and understand the value that doctors and family doctors are offering this province, and so I hope that it does make its way. I'm not sure exactly what could be done at this point, or who exactly could change the decision, but I would appreciate an apology from somebody at some point.
I appreciate your time this morning, sir. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure. Bye-bye. That's Dr. Neil Patterson. And again, I didn't really know how to put it, but it is a story bigger than just Dr. Patterson, because if he's hearing from other colleagues in this province who are dealing with the exact same concern, what's the likelihood of so-called greener pastures up along being made even more attractive? We can't afford this, and I know that we're talking about a lot of money if there's a significant number of doctors who haven't received incentives that can be as lucrative as $200,000, but we agreed to it, and we got to stand by it, especially when we talk about healthcare professionals. Let's get a break. And when we get back, Joe's in the queue to talk about the roads. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go line number 3. Joe, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
24-hour snow clearing. Is that for Newfoundland all over?
No.
Not just for St. John?
No, there's 14 routes that have been identified. The minister responsible says they are the most heavily traveled 14 routes that are going to get this year's phase of 24/7 snow clearing, which is not even a thing quite yet. I don't think they've done all the necessary hiring to make it an actual effective plan quite yet.
No. That's some cold time, Patty.
Yeah, it's chilly out there today.
Yeah. Now, I got one more question for you. I'll let you go on. When is the seniors supposed to get that 1551?
Comes over the course of a year, comes out quarterly, same time with GST.
Comes out the same time with GST.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to get that for sure, aren't we?
It was in the budget.
Yeah.
Administered by CRA.
What about the social services? Is that going up?
There was a forecasted increase, but it was pretty small, as far as I can recall.
Was that after New Year's?
Not really sure of the timing of that one, Joe, to be honest.
No. So the seniors, well, I'll get that $1,551, eh?
Apparently so.
Yeah, that's good. That can come in handy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, and Patty, bye.
No sweat, Joe. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, that's the seniors benefit that he's referring to, and the maximum is $1,551, and that comes with a net family income of $29,000-ish or below. Then there's a sliding scale that goes all the way to $43,000, where you will get less, but you still qualify for the seniors benefit. Premier Wakeham, in addition to that, has talked about expanding it by, or increasing it by 20%. So we'll see when that comes to pass. And I think even more importantly is when we know that whether it be thresholds to qualify for your guaranteed income supplement or seniors benefit or what have you, if you set a target 5 years ago of $29,000, $29,000 in 2020 is vastly different than $29,000 in 2025. It's just not the same purchasing power whatsoever. So it's, I think, a very meaningful opportunity to have a rethink of those access or eligibility numbers. Let's go to Dr. Phil Earl on line 1. Phil, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. I just had to phone in. I heard this young doctor, a specialist there, speaking to you. And by the way, I'm not practicing in Newfoundland, but I practiced 25 years in the States. But this young man he risked a lot obviously very bright and told a true picture. Now, I'm just going to give you a couple of other facts to go along exactly with this type of story. Here in Carbonear a few years ago, we had two wonderful internists there. One was Yarborough, and the other guy, his last name was Reza. Reza was from England. He was a PhD in biochemistry, 15 years, an internist in England. A tremendous guy. And both of these people were very, very smart. And Yarborough moved out into a clinic in the town, so he wouldn't be involved in the hospital because he couldn't get his patients getting stress tests, cardiac stress tests. It took him much longer in the hospital than if he had a practice out in the clinic. So he did all this, but over a period of time, these two people were treated very poorly by the administration, the health care system here in Newfoundland. It had to do with monies that they were owed. The specialists being out here in this area, I get a bonus. Now, I can't quote me on experts on it, and I don't want to make errors because I'm not involved with it, but I was told this by these. And these two people ended up leaving. Yarborough left. He went somewhere in Ontario, and I know Reza went to Ontario, and it is very sad. And also, I can't mention the names, but people here at the Carbonear Hospital, tremendous people with double jobs and specialties, were being pressured about the work time they put in, had to write letters to them. They had a family to raise, and all kinds of problems that, in the bottom line, the administration here in this province, whatever's the matter with them, and I was a doctor so I can make this comment, they're treating these people like they're employees. And let me tell you something, Patty. There's no one a boss of a doctor. You go to school for 10 or 12 years, get a specialty. There's no one your boss. You're the boss. Everything comes from the education and the expertise of a specialist. And this province, in the medical part of it that's looking after these specialists, are treating them like, second-class citizens. And this man was on there, no doubt. He risked a lot to say this, and he was a real gentleman to still be here. Anyway, I just wanted to back it up and say that it's not the first time this happened. It's been happening everywhere.
Yes, and then it's the number and the extensive audits by MCP and money's not being paid, and the stories go on. And of course, doctors who share their individual stories with me, I'll keep their names out of it because they need to be. I need to respect their privacy because they've all been told that if you speak out, you might be disciplined. Even Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services told Dr. Patterson not to speak out, but he just got fed up, and it's hard to blame him.
You know, 100% right. I can tell you just one thing. I asked Reza. He was a wonderful guy. He came to the house and showed me his PhD thesis on biochemistry, and I understand that. I had a master's degree in theoretical physics. So anyway, a real nice guy, a gentleman, and he diagnosed me with a heart attack, which I ended up getting open heart surgery. But I asked him, I said, why are you leaving? I said, you don't like the people? They're different. Is it cold here? He said, no, it's just the opposite. The people are beautiful in Newfoundland. I love the place. There's no discriminations. Freedom, nature, and everything. It's not that at all. Is the pressure and the way he was treated by the so-called healthcare managers, treating him with salaries and workload and all this kind of thing. I about cried. We need these people here. We need internists of their caliber. God only knows out here in Carbonear, any hospital, they're a gift. They're a gift to our society. And what we have in there, the administrators, they think they're in charge. They treat all these people like they're riding on a garbage truck. I'm not insulting the garbage workers, but it's that kind of an attitude, and it's totally wrong.
Yes, and as Dr. Patterson pointed out, and you know it to be true, is it's a pretty small medical community, and doctors talk to doctors. When a doctor who's considering moving to this province hears these type of stories, you have to believe it kind of changes their tune. So, and maybe even graduates coming from our own medical school hear these stories and wonder whether or not there's better opportunities elsewhere. It just can't be the case. And I'm not saying we have to put doctors on a pedestal, but we have to treat them fairly. They have to feel respected. We have to live up to our contractual obligations. Just very fundamental things. Dr. Earl, I'll give you the final words before I get to the news.
Well, all that what you said is right. I just want to say for people who never heard me and people in the medical doctors and so on, I hear this and who I am. I'm Dr. Philip Earl, MD from Dalhousie, and before that, I had a master's degree in theoretical quantum physics, Lead University, honors all the way. That's my background, and so from that I speak.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. I'm just going to break in for the news. When we come back, tons of time left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 2, and David, can you put that on for me? The clicker ain't working. Line number 2, Charlie, you're on the air.
Oh, good morning, Paddy.
Morning.
Paddy, how does your dog like all this snow? Is he playful in it or what?
He loves it. I cannot get him out of the park. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Paddy, I'd like to make a book recommendation first. It's called The Wide Sea, Imperial Ambitions. It's Captain Cook's last voyage, his third voyage.
Okay.
It's totally fascinating. And he gets killed, of course, in the Hawaiian Islands, and he's probably more responsible for it than the natives. But anyway, and on that note, he observed the locals, young men, out on boards about 6 feet long, couple of feet wide, surfing. So surfing in 1776. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Do you want to make a quick comment?
No, I don't really know what to say about it, but what's the title of the book again?
The title of the book is The Wide Sea, Imperial Ambitions, and the author Hampton Sides.
Okay.
Okay, you had the doctor on this morning, and he was talking about trying to get his bonus, $200,000, and I couldn't help but think, whatever committee decides all this, they allow $4.9 million to a doctor, and this guy has trouble getting $200,000. Just seems a little bit strange, those two figures. Would you agree with that?
What's strange about it, I'm sorry?
Well, that they would allow a doctor to bill as much as $4.9 million. It seems to me that $1 million you would start to question things, unless doctors are suddenly on a pedestal or something, and you get this guy can't get the $200,000. It just seems to me that in one case they were very, very strict and watching the cents and dollars, and the other one not so much.
Yeah, I don't really know what oversight looks like insofar as billing month by month at MCP. I really don't know, but they kind of feel like two different conversations to me. This was an incentive offered to him to work in a family care clinic on the West Coast. He was also then asked to work in the hospital and in the emergency room, and still has not received his bonus, as opposed to whatever process is in place to monitor billing weekly, monthly, annually, quarterly, whatever the case may be.
Okay, it just struck me as a little bit incongruous, but anyway. You had a guy on yesterday talking about basically going it alone with Gull Island. Am I right on that?
Yep.
You know, if we haven't learned already that going it alone from Muskrat Falls, I don't know what it would take us to. There's so many unknowns talking about data centers, and who the heck is going to finance billions of dollars to we're certainly not going to take it on as a province. And are these companies, Microsoft, that going to come in and spend $12 or $15 billion to? I mean, the whole thing makes no sense. The conversation we're having now, whether we should go ahead with this MOU thing, that has to be settled. But it seems that people bring up these far-fetched things, make it sound like it's an option when it's not really.
I don't quite understand the go it alone, especially we haven't even dealt with Muskrat Falls in full, so I just don't get the concept of going it alone, to be honest with you. Like, even if you had your big industry, whether it be Microsoft or Meta or Jeff Bezos to town with artificial intelligence data centers, I mean, even if you did your very best on that front, we're still talking about selling electricity at commercial or industrial rates. The return on that investment, boy, it'd be a long time to pay off what would inevitably be, $30 billion worth of building Gull Island out, and then you're still going to have to get some of the power out. You're not going to be able to use 2,225 megawatts with the data centers. So I know why people are, I think it's born of the fact that Hydro-Quebec in this MOU has all the authority at Gull, gets the lion's share of the power, all the authority. We still don't really firmly understand the jobs issues at Gull Island. So I get it. A lot of this feels like hangover about, distrust for Quebec and Hydro-Quebec as much as anything else. And I'm not saying that this MOU is perfect or it's maybe the best deal ever. I just don't know. But I don't think many people know.
Well, the talk about that is almost as silly as people talking about Muskrat Falls is going to be so great 50 years down the road. Meanwhile, people have to pay bills that are going to go sky high as the years go on. The last thing I want to mention, Patty, is I want to make is a couple of predictions for the new year. I'm gonna predict that Trump will release the files on UFOs, and he'll have his reasons for doing that, mainly distraction. But if he does it, I'll finally give him marks for something. And the second one I want to say is the stock market. I believe before the 6 months is out in the new year, there'll be a crash in the stock market. It's overvalued. All indications point to a real breakdown at some point. So that'll be my two predictions for, you can write those down.
The half of the growth in market value this past year in the United States, so on the big board, 50% of it is directly associated with artificial intelligence. I mean, there's always, just look at history, it's pretty clear. If there's that type of reliance on one industry, one technological advancement, one piece of innovation, inevitably there's a bubble there. And when bubbles burst, it takes a direct impact on the stock market, on people's 401ks, if we're talking about Americans, on people's pension portfolios. So, I mean, it's right there for all to see. I mean, the stock market, when people say that that's the clear evaluation of the strength of the economy, not really. I mean, if everyone went to cash in their stocks today, then the world would be upside down. There's no way to cover the perceived or the told value of some of these companies. It's just not. There's a lot of make-believe that goes on in the stock market. Not to say that there's not meaningful ways to invest and to enrich your bank account and your portfolio, but boy, oh boy, it's pretty contentious stuff. And the manipulation of the market has long been an issue. And I don't know about your other predictions, and I don't know what Trump is going to release, but this Friday we're told we'll get some sort of release of some sort of information associated with Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know how much faith we can put in any of that stuff, but apparently that's coming out. This evening, the president is making an address to the nation. I guess the consensus there is going to be something to do with Venezuela and the big armada that's down there. And I mean, this is not about fentanyl. This is not about drugs. This is about oil. Same thing with Nigeria. It's not about people being persecuted. It's about critical minerals. These things, there's really not that complicated sometimes.
And it's also about performance and showing that I'm a very strong man. I can go and blow up boats, right?
Yeah, I wonder what that's going to include tonight, because if there's going to be some sort of actual war with Venezuela, I mean, that's wild stuff to consider.
There will be no war with Venezuela. How about that?
I don't know.
They'll probably attack some places on land, but he will not send troops in there. You can take that to the bank. Okay,
and
Patty.
Hopefully you're absolutely right. Charlie, appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's coming in so far as the president's addressing the nation this evening, but they've been pretty boastful and forceful in the way they talk about issues regarding Venezuela in the recent past. And, it's a funny world. So with all the conversation about bombing what we're told are drug boats coming out of Venezuela that are not even heading to the United States, and they've killed upwards of almost 100 people now in these strikes, if you dare question it, the pushback is, so you support the drug cartels, you support the narco-terrorists. No, it doesn't have to be that way. It's not a zero-sum game here, but American politics is fascinating to watch. Anyway, lots of stuff to talk about inside of this country, inside of this province, and you can pick one of those items to talk about right after this break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Sometimes I've a hard time deciphering some emails, but this was a basic question about the fiscal update offered yesterday by Minister Party, and he's more than welcome to join us on the program. Maybe we'll reach out and see if he can make time for us. But the question is basically, why are we doubting these new numbers? I didn't doubt the numbers at all. They are what they are. So if the deficit now is $948 million as opposed to 626, the question I asked, which I think is reasonable, is, we make reference to the big tobacco settlement money. We've all known about that for quite a long time here now. As soon as the budget was brought forward, and of course, we weren't told on budget day that had been done. It took some follow-up questions from the media to figure that out. So that's not exactly new revelation, but goes on to ask, how are they going to be able to follow through with campaign pledges with this new understanding of where we are financially speaking? That's a very good question. I don't really know the answer to it, but we'll see if we can't get Mr. Party on to talk about how that all jives with campaign pledges. Let's keep going here. Let's go to line number 2. Marina, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Good morning. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing okay. I'm calling now. I usually get my daughter to do this, but I said, no, I'm going to put my big girl pants on. I'm going to call him myself. Patty, a couple of weeks ago, you had talked about the MAID program, the medically assisted death. I don't know if you remember or not, but my husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer a couple of years ago. He passed away. So I just wanted to talk about our experience with that program.
Please do.
Okay. So in June of 2023, my husband was diagnosed terminal pancreatic cancer. It was in September when he actually said to me, of all the dogs that we had, and when they were dying, they had cancer, what did we do? So, of course, we gave them the needle. So he says, that's what I want. I supported him with that. Actually, the process itself went pretty smoothly for us. It wasn't difficult. You had to get doctor's forms completed and everything. The problem that we ran into was my husband's health deteriorated really quickly, and he wasn't coherent enough to sign an insurance form. So what this insurance form is if you choose a date, the insurance form allows you to change the date. So because he wasn't coherent enough, I couldn't change the date for him. So he went downhill pretty rapidly. And so therefore we couldn't go ahead with the MAID program because he couldn't change the date on the form. Even though we had a healthcare directive in place, what was told to me was I couldn't sign that on his behalf because I would benefit from his death. So, Patty, one of the things that I think that should happen with this is obviously everybody needs a healthcare directive along with your power of attorney and your will. But I think if I, myself right now, were diagnosed with a terminal cancer, I think it's probably one of the things that I would start myself so that my loved ones didn't have to make those decisions. We should be able to talk to our lawyer or a doctor or something like that while we're coherent enough to make these decisions, to allow our loved ones not to have to worry about going through what my husband went through in the last few days of his life. And on September 29th, I spoke to his doctor, and the doctor figured that he had a few days left. I left the hospital. His sisters were with him. I came home to shower. He died while I was at home. If that MAID program was in place, I could have been with him, and he wouldn't have had to suffer as long as he did. So those are the reasons that I wanted to call in today to say, if anybody is looking at doing this, if you're terminal, you know you're going to die, do it. have it done so it's in place.
It's such
anyway, that's all I want to say.
And I'm glad you're sharing your own personal story here. You know, my thoughts on it to me, as a general concept, makes all the sense in the world. If the prognosis is dire and you're facing insufferable pain, a remediable condition, then this should be made available to you. The process is pretty thorough. I think what's unfortunately happened here, though, is that because it's available, that sometimes people who just need additional supports are being offered the opportunity for medical assistance in dying. And even inside Veterans Affairs, if they present themselves with one concern or another, and before they even examine all the options, asking folks, have you considered MAID? That's not exactly how it was intended to be utilized in this country, but for folks who have no hope and insufferable pain is right there in front of them and in front of their family, this is a legitimate conversation to have between yourself and your doctor or doctors. So, you know, it's become a political hot potato, which unfortunately happens all the time here. You know, as opposed to policy and the impact it can have on an individual and family, we're talking about the politics of it all. This should be a healthcare concern, not a political concern.
Absolutely. And like I said, we had the healthcare directive in place, but because they said that I would benefit from his death, I couldn't change the date that he had chosen.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, so, and I agree with you. I mean, somebody shouldn't be able to just say, okay, I'm going to choose MAID because, you know, I think I'm going to die or something like that, right? If you're diagnosed with, you know, especially a terminal cancer, it's there. I didn't think in my wildest dreams that my husband and I would ever have to have that conversation, but we did, and I supported him with it, because I knew he was suffering. Outside of MAID, there's one last thing that I do want to say, and there's been a lot of talk on Open Line and through the media about the disability tax credit. So for anybody who's sick, if you have something wrong with you, apply for the disability health tax credit, because it is there for those purposes. And even if you have to file the last tax return, if CRA approves it, you do have that on the final tax return of the person who passes away.
Understood, and helpful information. I really appreciate you making time for the show, Marina.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Take good care.
Bye-bye.
Right, bye-bye. I mean, it's one of those tricky ones. When it started to get a lot of additional political commentary, because it's a healthcare conversation, and politicizing healthcare is always a bit strange to me, was a story that came out of Manitoba, and I'm pretty sure both women were in Winnipeg at the time, is they had one ill or another where all they really needed was some additional support at home. And they'd be able to manage their symptoms. They'd be able to manage their lives. And when that was not made available, the next thing you know, there's a conversation about medical assistance in dying. So it's not supposed to be used like that. The concept in general terms just makes sense to me. Like, I hate to be so morbid, but if I'm facing a death sentence, a terminal illness, I'm going to consider it. Why? Not only to avoid that type of insufferable pain for me, but to have my family watch me deteriorate when there is no hope, there is no cure, there is no treatment. So in that circumstance, I just think it's a dignified conversation and a dignified way out. And I hate to be so morbid and think about it, but the conversation is happening. You know, they expanded some of the issues regarding MAID recently, like back in 2021, for folks who their natural death isn't reasonably foreseeable, which is a strange one. Now, what's the status of mental illness being the sole condition? I think that was part of the conversation last year. Has that actually been implemented? I don't think so. I think we kind of went back to the drawing board on that one, and that's a very difficult conversation to have. And even people in the mental health community are torn. Why? Because it's complicated. Let's get a break in. When we come back, plenty of show left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 3. Lisa, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hi there.
I just called to see if you knew of any organizations out there that are still taking names for hampers, for Christmas hampers.
That's a good question. I know there's a wait list that many of the organizations I'm familiar with, they have a wait list to get on for hampers, whether it be the Single Parents Association or the Community Food Sharing Association or Bridges to Hope or the Salvation Army, up and down the line. So off the top of my head, I really don't know the answer to that, Lisa.
Oh, okay. I don't know what to do.
Well, I will give you one piece of information that might be helpful. So if you call 211, because they have a real extensive network of trying to keep up to date with some of these offerings by different organizations, they might be able to give you a very specific answer as opposed to what I was able to do, simply saying that there's a bunch of wait lists, because I know that to be true because I hear from people all the time. So if you call 211, you might get a specific answer to your specific question.
Yeah, that'll be good, yeah. You know, because the cost of living now is really high, you know, and I'm disabled, you know. You there?
I'm listening. So if you make that call to 211, if you have an answer as to where people can't put their name in for a Christmas hamper and they're still accepting names, if you get back to me, it'd be helpful information for the rest of the listeners. How about that?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, that's what I'll do then.
Do that.
I got two numbers there for Salvation Army and I don't know the other one. There's something to Hope. Bridges to Hope?
Yep.
Okay, so I might call them and just see, right?
Yeah, it's probably your best bet. And I tried just dialing 211 as well.
Yes, and try that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let me know.
All right. Yes, and I'll get back to you.
Please do. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's keep going. Let's go to line number 2. Ken, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. And okay, so I just listened. You had a caller there, and he was talking about $1,551. What that's actually referred to as triple pension tax. Now, I pulled this up online. It seems to be. It's got the Canada flag, so it seems to be from the government, from a government website. Now, this article was posted in November 2025. So here's what it says. In November 2025, many, and emphasis on the word many Canadian citizens will receive a significant financial boost from 3 government programs: Old Age Security, Guaranteed Supplement Income, and Canada Pension. So I went one further and I went and checked my CRA account to see if I'd missed anything. I'm sure I would have seen it in my bank account. But the only thing that I got coming up for January is GST payment. So the reason I'm calling is a lot of seniors might have heard that and said, well, that's awesome. And then you start looking and then it gives you a sense of false hope. You know what I mean?
Yep. There is an increase coming for CPP, but it's 2%.
Yeah, which that's not very much. Just a case of beer.
Yeah, I mean, then there's an increase in yearly maximum pensionable earnings, increase in contribution. No, there's no increase in contribution rates. It's still at, 5.95% for employer-employee?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And reference to the seniors benefit that you hear discussed on this program is a provincial program. It happens to be administered by CRA because CRA, of course, has your filings to dictate your actual net family income for the year. So it is a provincial program. It is provincial money, but it's administered by CRA. That's seniors benefit that people talk about.
Okay, let me get this right. So that what he was talking about. Okay, now I was getting just under for GST, just under $500 a month, and all of a sudden I got a boost. Is that what you're talking about?
No, so eligibility for the provincial seniors benefit at this moment of time is you had to be 64 years of age or over by December 31st of a specific tax year. Then it's an eligibility regarding your net family income. It once was $29,400-ish. Now it's up to just over $30,000. It floats all the way to $43,300, I think the number is. Maximum benefit is $1,551. That's an increase from what was $1,516, and it's paid out quarterly with GST, administered by CRA, but it's a provincial program.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I got that. So for argument's sake, I was getting $500 a month, and then all of a sudden I seen a boost, but no explanation. So that's probably what it was, the provincial boost. Let's say $150 a month.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought I'd call you, but I'm not going to take a lot of your time this morning. So, like I said, I hope a lot of seniors that were listening to you don't get excited about getting a few extra dollars in the new year, because it says many Canadian seniors, so that doesn't include all of us, right? So anyway, Patty.
Yeah, I appreciate your time.
On that note, I want to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas. Have a good New Year as well. I will be still listening till Christmas comes on, but anyway, thanks for all you do, Patty. Pretty good show you got there. Love it. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you and your family.
I appreciate that. Merry Christmas to you and yours as well, Ken. Thanks for the call. Okay, there we go. Pleasantries on the way out. Love it. Let's go to line number 1. Hi, Danny. You're on the air.
Yeah. Hello, Patty. You ready for Christmas?
Yeah, as ready as I'm going to be, although I still haven't bought a couple of things that I have to share as presents, but I'm almost there. How about you?
I went to the bank and got the money, and it was because I don't know what to buy.
I'm not sure what to buy either, to be honest.
No. What's the story in the White Rose? Is that done?
West White Rose?
Yeah.
I think first oil from the new platform is expected early next year, I believe.
Yeah. But that's a lot of work in our human resources. Ever since the Hibernian being built in the Hebron, the modules being built here.
For what?
For the Hibernian, the Hebron, and the White Rose South.
Yeah, they just finished all of that work on shore. I think it's all being recoupled now for the extension, which is going to produce another, I think, 80,000 barrels of oil a day. And I think they're talking about the extended lifespan of maybe 14 years, if I remember the numbers correctly.
No, I'm talking about that the modules currently being built here in Hibernia, the Hebron, and White Rose. And even that module hotel down there in Water Street, that's going to be built here. The modules will be built here too.
Which hotel? Sorry?
The module hotel down Prescott Street, Waterfront, and Water Street.
Okay.
The Alt Hotel?
The Alt Hotel, yes, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah. They could have built the modules here for that.
I suppose so.
Yeah. And well, that's a lot of work from our resources. What's the story on the baiting of topsides? Are we getting it or we're not getting it?
I don't think anybody knows at this moment in time. They're going to offer an expression of interest to local companies based on whether or not they can meet the cost elsewhere and hit the schedule as performed elsewhere, like South Korea or Singapore or whatever the case may be. Yep.
Yeah. Because we need work.
We do need work, for sure.
I'm retired, actually, from the federal government.
How long were you working with the federal government?
30 years.
30 years, okay.
I'm retired now. It's 64. I'll be 65 next year.
Retirement sounds good. It's not in the cards for me anytime soon, unfortunately. Anything else you want to say, Danny Welby? Happy this morning?
What's going on? You know the pipe there out in Torbay Road that Harvey's Offshore had?
Yeah.
That kind of went downhill, didn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Like he scrapped it and put trees on it?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I appreciate the
So
call,
what
Danny.
happened to her?
I really don't know.
Me?
I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah. Oh, you have a nice Christmas and family and VOCM.
You too, Danny. Thanks for the call.
Take care of yourself.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's see here. Let's get to the break right on time. When we come back, plenty show left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. While Dave organized the caller on line number 3, got an email asking, why didn't I talk about this? And I think it was probably offered as a wisecrack. It's about some updated information regarding operations at the Stephenville Airport, which is not even actually designated as an airport at this moment in time. Of course, it's been shuttered since they cut off the power there a few months back. So I'm pretty sure this was a wisecrack email, but okay, here it goes. So we do know now that there's a Calgary-based private equity manager representing BTG Capital Inc. has acquired the rights to collect a $2 million court judgment against Carl Diamond. What this actually means for operations at the airport into the future, I have no earthly idea. Even when people look around at what BTG Capital actually is, pretty small footprint online, I don't think there's any reason to believe that this gives any glimmer of hope for resumption of airport operations at this moment in time. But again, I'm pretty sure the emailer was just yanking my chain by sending along that particular story. But it's been closed since June. I mean, it's very much akin to conversations where when there's a need, and for instance in this province, when we're talking about the big scheme of things, there's a need for an influx of cash. And so some people point to the fiscal update yesterday and how that might relate to potential for more monies, more revenue coming to the province based on the potential for contractual agreements with Hydro-Quebec and the province of Quebec. I don't link the two directly, but it becomes more tempting for folks who do see the shortcomings financially speaking. And I don't know if we have a revenue side problem as much as we have a spending problem in this province, but that seems to me what happened in Stephenville. They were struggling along. City Council was putting forward money for continued operations at, I can hear that in my headset, Dave, continued operations at the Stephenville Airport. And then along comes Carl Diamond. And the announcement just sounded so enticing. And this is as old as 2021, I think. So while there was such a desperate need, and people in the region were hoping, with just some glimmer of hope, that someone might ride in on a white horse and save the airport, and that's what it felt like. So it came with hundreds of millions of dollars in pledges, hundreds or thousands of jobs, and the manufacturing of these yet to be fully understood or designed, or even the real thing of these big cargo drones. And of course, none of it happened. And since then, there's been a pretty tattered story about operations, now the lack thereof, at Stephenville Airport. So I think someone sent it along simply because I have talked about Stephenville Airport, even though there's not much to talk about over the last number of months and years. But yeah, I don't know what the implication of BTG Capital buying up or acquiring the rights to the $2 million court settlement against Carl Diamond. All that said, in the last court proceedings, there were vague mentions made of BTG and what role they might play, but it feels like it's more a role that they'll play with Carl Diamond as opposed to the role they might play at the Stephenville Airport, even though it's a crying shame that went by the wayside the way it did. And again, another reference to an email is, why am I all of a sudden so concerned about how doctors in the province get paid? What? How can we all not be concerned? And this was a very specific story and a conversation we had with Dr. Neil Patterson here this morning. But as I said to Dr. Patterson, and not as an intended insult, but the broad strokes are, this story is bigger than him. Because if he's not alone, being in a circumstance where he signed a contract to come to this province, to work in this province, the incentives were floated. He didn't demand them. The province floated them. And they were available to doctors far and wide to work in a collaborative care clinic, of which there are 23 up and running or currently in the process of being up and running. So I don't know what the question means about why am I so concerned with that. Well, if it means that Dr. Patterson leaves as a result, and he says, and Dr. Cynthia Slade, the president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Medical Association, has said that Dr. Patterson's not alone. So if that's the case, and if the potential to lose doctors because we haven't lived up to our end of the bargain, why is that not a concern for everybody? Because we all see the stories about wait times between senior family doctor and moving on to see a specialist. We know the story about wait times in emergency rooms. We know about the downgrading of some emergency rooms to urgent care clinics and all the rest of it. So any opportunity to keep a doctor in the province simply by paying him based on the contract we sign with them I'm not so sure why that's an issue to discuss, because healthcare, pretty big deal in most people's minds, and probably at the top of the list for a lot of people. And then, you get the same reference from the same people all the time. Why just focus on doctors? And we try not to, or at least I try not to, because there are X number of disciplines in the healthcare system, and we need them all to be there and fully staffed for the system to work as intended. And that does, yes, absolutely include nurse practitioners, which is the same person. Maybe they're a nurse practitioner and maybe just feel slighted that they don't enter into the conversation at the same level of doctors. But yes, nurse practitioners, absolutely a vital part of the system. And that's not to diminish the role that other healthcare pros will play, from technicians and clinicians all the way up the food chain to the specialists, medical doctors. So we know we're entered into a pilot program regarding nurse practitioners and moving off into the private sector and billing MCP directly. I don't know why it requires a pilot program. I think we can all understand the importance of being able to have access to primary care, and in this case, a nurse practitioner, which can perform a lot of, not all of, a lot of the duties assigned to family doctors or other medical doctors. So yeah, I think it's time to, move past the pilot and just put it out there. The fear that I suppose that the public sector and the government has is that if that becomes an option, and when you work for yourself as basically a subcontractor to the government, your hours are more flexible, the patient roster can be what you want it to be, as opposed to first come, first serve, take them as they come into the public sector, whether it be at a clinic or the new ambulatory hub or at the emergency room. So I guess that's some of the worry. But basically, for most taxpayers, I think they just want access. And the ability to go in to get a service provided by a nurse practitioner shouldn't have to come with putting cash on the barrelhead. As far as I'm concerned, anyway. People may indeed have different opinions. And then, I guess it was late last week, we talked about phase number 2 of expanding private health care in the province of Ontario. It's a pretty widely produced report here. So what they're doing is, for 3 or maybe 4 other clinics, they're going to be providing hip and knee replacement. And they will be billing the public, but they'll be offered in a private operated setting. The concept of private healthcare is not new. There's plenty of private offerings in this country already, whether it be dentists or chiropractors or, yes, surgeons. The issue that people speak to and the concerns that are voiced is that unless you have a model that makes sure that doctors can't leave the public sector in full, like in many parts of Europe, you can have your own shingle hung out and offer a private clinic, but you're still obliged to perform some duties, some level of duty, in hospitals. That's the issue. Because if it's a private offering, then they will have the ability to treat people based on the ability to pay, and they'll be able to pick and choose their patients. So they maybe just will not deal. And this is, I think there's a difference between getting diagnostics done, like an MRI or a CAT scan, versus a surgery or other private offerings in healthcare, because that's the concern, is that take so many doctors out of the public system, because it might look very attractive and enticing to be a doctor in a full private setting, but they can come with problems. And I mean, it's a loophole, right? So if it was accepting cash on the barrelhead to get a surgery done, let's just pick a number, get a hip replaced for $25,000. The people who have the money and are waiting for hip replacement, they'll take it. And who can blame them? If you're hurting and you've got the money to rectify your pain and to get back on track, people who have the money are going to pay it. But those who don't, can't. So I do think, there's a hybrid available to make things better. I mean, just look at the numbers. There's obviously got to be some sort of correlation, if not direct, certainly indirect, of the story that we heard last week about some 500,000 Canadians this year left the emergency room without seeing the doctor, which is a huge problem. Because what happens? If you can't get access to primary care, whatever your ill is likely only going to worsen. If you go to the emergency room and don't see a doctor and leave because you're frustrated or simply don't have more time to wait, then what's the likelihood that whatever ails you, whatever hurts you today, is only going to get worse in the future? And when things get worse and we don't nip it in the bud with a bit of preventative medicine, then it becomes more costly, because your interaction with the healthcare system will be extended. And the possibility to be admitted into a hospital is obviously one of the most expensive things in the country. The two top billing issues are a night in prison or a night in the hospital. So there's a distinct reason why we talked about this Dr. Neil Patterson story, because losing one doctor is bad enough. The possibility to lose others is obviously part of the complicated problem that we're talking about. And to Dr. Patterson's own words, the medical community is a pretty small world. They talk with each other. And even doctors who are outside of this province and maybe considering coming to this province, if they hear these types of stories, that throws cold water on their possibilities or their consideration to move to the province and set up shop, whether it be in St. John's or out in Branch. Who knows? But so that's why the conversation seems to be important, which is why we've talked about it every day this week, because it could be a problem that becomes a snowball going down the hill. And we hope that's not the case. And hopefully Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services have heard the stories or read it in other media outlets, because we've got to address it head on, because it can indeed become a bigger problem. Let's get a break in here for the news. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Sticking over to the Mayor of Mount Pearl. That's Dave Aker. Mayor Aker, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How's everything?
Very well, thanks. How about you?
Good. Tired of the weather, early winter. Hopefully we have an early spring, but I'm well, thank you very much.
Glad to hear. Let's dig into the most recent budget tabled by the City of Mount Pearl. There's a lot of reference to public safety therein, and there's a specific earmark of $200,000. Questions are being asked about exactly how is that $200,000 going to be spent regarding public safety, or to increase or enhance public safety.
Yeah, we're going to roll out our safety plan now in January, and they've been hard at work, the committee. They've had 8 focus groups, 22 interviews with members of the community. We did some surveying. I know it takes a bit of time, Patty, but we're not really dragging our heels. We're working with our partners on this, which include the RNC and the Department of Justice, as well as community groups, and we're getting there. But I can tell you that the focus is going to be on youth safety and engagement. So recall some of the incidents that we had in Mount Pearl that spurred our public meeting a year ago, November. That was more about the youth creating a bit of havoc, with certain parts of the city, and we saw some very abusive and criminal-style behavior, impacting some of our residents. But so we're trying to make our focus will be making safe and inclusive public spaces, the park areas and that, where people are around publicly. And our seniors are telling us they want to feel more comfortable. So we're going to focus on that, and we're going to create safer places for our youth, which includes increasing the programming that's available at the REIT Centre for the youth in our community to do things after school. We've always had a good program up there, but it will be beefed up, and likely also some of it may be relocated to other parts of the city. And finally, we're trying to strengthen the communication between us and the police, our residents. And Patty, you'll agree with me, I'm sure, that safety is everybody's responsibility at the end of the day. It's no good for me to sit here and say I've been talking to the chief of police and it's all in the RNC. The RNC are probably going to say, well, your municipal enforcement people need to step up and we need to liaison better. So rather than spending all of our time going in circles, debating and arguing about, we will announce the plan in January, but a lot of work has gone through it, and I've asked staff the question, the things that we're going to do in this plan, how do we know they work? And they've been a little bit ahead of me in getting the answer, but we're joining the Upstream program, which is run by the Canadian Centre for Safer Communities. There are 10 piloted sites across Canada, and that's what it's all about, comparing notes and seeing what things work and what things don't work, and making sure that we're doing the right things. The 10 pilot sites, our community is very similar to us, and they just don't talk about police interaction and police monitoring your community, but it's about empowering all of our communities to shape locally grounded prevention strategies. And I'm quoting from a set of notes here when I say that, Patty, and prevention is the key word here. So I can't get into all the details. My colleagues want to wait till after Christmas to make that announcement. So when we do the budget, though, we had to make a provision. And while $200,000 seems like a very small amount, we're spending every year, we're spending well over $1 million already on municipal enforcement and safety related measures here in the city of Mount Pearl. So the $200,000 is over and above that.
So for clarification, the $200,000, is that for the full 5 years of community safety and the well-being plan, or is that $2,000 for this year?
That is $200,000 for 2026. And we will implement more of the plan as it unfolds. So that's the first year's allotment. It likely will not be spent immediately, so you can picture that being annualized to be more than $200,000. So the budget for 2027 will be even higher again to annualize that $200,000, and then on top of that, there will be new measures introduced. But some of those new measures may be the responsibility of the provincial government, the RNC, and the Department of Justice. We haven't worked all the details out, but Patty, in everything we do, the finances always guide us in terms of what we're capable of and what we can sustain.
In the City of St. John's, we saw an increase in overall spend of about 5%. For your budget, up an annual increase of 7%, but everything stayed the same regarding mill rates for industry, commercial, residential, water fees the same, waste collection the same. So is that a property value related or property assessment related issue to be able to absorb a 7% increase?
Yeah, it's and there's a bit of a misnomer out there. Nobody here has said we did not increase taxes. Everybody's got their assessments from the assessment agency. They've received them in early December. How it's impacting you depends on what you have in your hands in terms of an assessment. But I can tell you, 98%, and I've never seen this before, 98% of all of the assessments went up here in the city of Mount Pearl, which is reflecting a very strong but cash-poor housing market. There's a lot of low interest rates, I should say, driving sales up. And, as a result, Patty, we're up to a total of 7%. So if people want to say that there's an increase in spending and taxes, that would be true. But the city has always maintained its position that we can't tell any particular homeowner or any group of homeowners how much their taxes have changed by. But the 7% is made up, $3.9 million. And I asked staff long before the budget, and my colleagues wanted to know, well, what's causing it to go up? And the interesting part about it is, Patty, we know inflation is still impacting us. We're still running at around 2%, and that continues to annualize every year. And the things like regional services are up from the City of St. John's by $750,000. More money for fire, more money for wastewater. They're about to begin the secondary treatment plant down at the harbor. And at the end of the day, that could cost the region anywhere from $300 to $400 million. So this is just the start of it there. And perhaps you might see new tax lines on everybody's budget for a little bit more transparency and accountability. So think wastewater going forward. Our statutory and debt costs are up $800,000. Patty, salt is up $200,000, and we have to spend that money to keep the roads safe. We have more money for roads maintenance and other resources. So just to be transparent, our operating increase was $3.9 million, and it wasn't just inflation. And our total budget is up, 7% from an operating point of view. But that includes, in our case, that includes provisions for capital as well. And we're in a 4-year cycle for council, so year one typically is when you start to increase your capital budget so you can make sure your roads are all taken care of, your asset management type items, if you know what I mean, Patty.
Absolutely. And of course it is a misnomer to say that even if things hold steady on mill rate front, mill rate is only half the equation regarding my eventual property tax. So I understand that same conversation we had with Deputy Mayor Ellsworth here a couple of days ago. Public transportation. We know ridership at Metro Bus is up. A lot of it can be attributed to bus passes given to low-income earners. We know a lot of newcomers are using public transportation. You're talking about extension of service hours for a couple of routes. I can't remember what they are, 21 and 22 possibly. Do you happen
you're right. Yeah.
Do you happen to know the ridership numbers for Mount Pearl residents?
I don't have any ridership numbers just for Mount Pearl. We are doing surveys. Some of them are being done online, some of them being done on the buses. I don't have the results in front of me. But there's an indication that there's more and more non-Mount Pearl residents coming to the city to work. And our business community are echoing that too, right? So the extension of the existing routes is to make sure we have more coverage, primarily for bringing workers in and for making sure that when they finish their shift, for example, at Walmart or places like that they can also get home. And Patty, the region's grown, right? Like the trees in between the cities and the towns is gone. And that Metrobus service now is very much a regional service, moving people around, and likely will reach out further into Paradise and further down to CBS someday.
There was a couple of years ago, there was a proposed economic development partnership between CBS, Mount Pearl, and St. John's. Eventually, very late in the day, Mount Pearl pulled out. So can you give us some update on economic development conversations that maybe here between Paradise, CBS, and St. John's, or just Mount Pearl specific?
Well, yeah, Mayor Breen has said if we ever wanted to get back in, no problem there. But those conversations happen more at the staff level. We're not part of the threesome that started this new economic development agency. It's large. Our concern was the amount of administration that's gone into it. It's also very difficult, Patty, to say here are the results of what you've done. Instead, we are focusing on working with the Chamber of Commerce here, the Mount Pearl Paradise Chamber of Commerce, as well as the business owners in Donovan's. And this year alone, we're going to spend $1.3 million to increase road safety, egress, and access on the roadways, as well as put in sidewalks there in Donovan's. That's the feedback we're getting from our business owners. Our general feeling is that we can make them, and when I say happy, I don't just mean it from a physical point of view. If we can make them happy in their business dealings, at the end of the day, we're all successful. Donovan's, much like Glencrest, much like Kenmount Business Park, the core of the region is in 3 particular municipalities. We're mostly a logistical hub. We're not all oil-based. There's a lot of warehousing and a lot of retailing. Goes all the way in Topsa Road, goes all the way out Kenmount Road and the like, right? So the Paradise, Mount Pearl, St. John's, each of us has a slice of that core business that's basically making sure that goods and services move into our region and move to the retailers for customers, as well as to us as residents and other businesses. Appreciate your time this morning, Mayor Aker. Anything else before we say goodbye? Take care, Patty. No, I'm fine. Merry Christmas to you and family. The very same to you. Thanks for making time. Bye. Okay. Bye-bye. It's Mayor Dave Aker out Mount Pearl. Let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go. Line number 2. Hi, Verna. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How's it going?
Doing grand. You?
Oh, well, okay. It's more or less shut up and put up. Bell Island, lack of service, one vote. The Beaumont, Hamel, for some reason now is going to Bay Roberts. It always went to Long Pond or went to Bell Island or went to Portugal Cove, depending on the circumstances. But now they keep sending it to Bay Roberts. It's not saving us any money by not having this boat run because, number one, they're paying in Bay Roberts to have that dock there or in Long Pond. And it costs for that fuel back and forth, but it's not making no trips for Bell Island. Today, it's got on there at 9:30. Weather conditions will go back in service when it improves, when it's feasible. In regards to this bow thruster issues, that's been ongoing for years. But now all of a sudden the captains are not comfortable with this, and it's the captain's discretion. But we have to have somebody with experience, marine experience, with running these boats, and they have to be called out on what they feel comfortable running them on. The other day, gusting to 29, they were going to take it to Bay Roberts. All of a sudden, they started to Bay Roberts, then they decided to run it. Patty, if anybody else, you'd be working yourself out of a job. But again, you're only as good as your management, and if you don't have any management and you're making the calls and getting away with it, and I feel for the workers on the Legionnaire, because they're left to do the work. And are they being rewarded for it? Are they being thought about? No, but I do think about them, and I appreciate them. That because if we didn't have the crew on the Legionnaire, we would be isolated on Bell Island. And in regards to what's coming up for us in January, the Legionnaire, I don't know if you're aware of it, that is going for a refit for the bow thrusters because they couldn't do it with the refit when it was gone for 6 months because they couldn't take it out of the water. But they did take it to the harbor, but they didn't bother to take it out of the water. Whether they didn't have the space or they didn't have the crane, I don't know. But after it goes, the Legionnaire, which is not the swing vessel, as you heard them saying, the swing vessel is the Beaumont and the Astron. And the excuse me, I may not be saying it right, but it's the Camutic. that goes to Fogo in the winter when there's anything wrong with the veteran. When the veteran goes for its 2 weeks work, the Legionnaire is leaving Bell Island, and we are left with the Flanders that isn't even back yet. It was supposed to be 2 months' work. It's 3 months now, and it just was put around to another spot to put it on dry dock to get the work done. That they say it's going to take 2 months, but they're saying it should be back the end of this month. We're stuck with that, and the Beaumont with the bow thruster issues.
Just a
Where
basic...
is the work going to take place with these boats? Not going to happen.
Good question.
So we're at this, and the Legionnaire is going to Fogo. Why isn't it not the Beaumont and the Astron doing that work there? And in regards to traffic, we are the ones with the traffic that never changes, because you got to realize we are a commuting community. We commute for our jobs. We commute for medical. We commute for education. And this is where it goes. But in regards to what is going on, I thought that when a new party came in, that they would take accountability and they would look for accountability. Mr. Patton, I'm out here and I'm asking you, and maybe Patty, you may get some information in regards to what is going on with the boat system, because it's getting worse. And I don't know if people realize, but when the Flanders goes to the harbor and sets there, it's costing. Every day, it's costing to have that parked there.
Verna, quick question. What's the difference to Bell Island residents if one ferry or another is in Bay Roberts versus Long Pond?
Well, how long is this going to get from Bay Roberts to here, number one? Number two, why is it in Bay Roberts? What is it with Bay Roberts? Like, we don't know. They're not giving us information to why. And in regards to, you got to stop and think about it. Okay, if the Legionnaire breaks down, how long before it gets from Bay Roberts? Can you tell me?
No.
I think it's an hour and a half. Long Pond, I think it's 45 minutes. An hour and a half to 45 minutes when people are just after having surgery, or they just after having treatment, or they want to get home from work. That half hour, 45 minutes makes a real big difference. And like in regards to the boats, nobody wants to tell what's going on, why it's going on, and who is in charge, who is qualified marine experience. I know there's one guy in particular, and it's Mr. Merloni, who has experience, qualifications, and he has reached out to this department in regards to willing to help them, to cost efficient, to running efficient, to accountability, and they're working on it. We haven't got much time to work on it, Patty. We don't have much time. The people of Bell Island, I mean, is it just going to be a matter of time before something dramatic happens? And like I say, I moved here 30 years ago, and if that boat, like I say, in regards to, I think that captains should be taken and saying, okay, where do you feel comfortable to run a boat? What conditions? Is it gusting to 50? Is it gusting to 60? Is it with the undertow? That should be all placed out by qualified management. And then they go back to Transport Canada, and is this sufficient? Is this captain sufficient for here? Or maybe we should put the captains in other places if they don't feel comfortable here with this situation. Because I know that boat, in regards to running across the Tickle, it can be really scary. But I was always told years ago, I'd say, is it going to be rough? Well, ma'am, if you feel that way, I think you should stay where you're at. And the captains had confidence. And now I don't know if it's because of management or not feeling that they have their back, that if something did happen, because the captains are responsible for the boat. And if they make the wrong call, they are. But 29 gusting, Patty, that's kind of, it's time for somebody to, and as far as the Legionnaire, why is it leaving here when it has to leave to go to dry dock for the bow thrusters? Is the veteran coming to Bell Island to according to the last update we have, it's not. But the Chemutick is going to Fogo. So Fogo will have the Chemutick plus the Legionnaire or the Veteran when it comes back. As far as the Chemutick, it does not fit in Portugal Cove. It does not fit Bell Island. In regards to it in Fogo, it is. It may not be perfect, but it does work. Here, it can't work. And I'm not trying to compete one off against the other. I'm just saying we need answers. We need answers to why. And maybe if we had a picture of it, we could understand. I don't understand Fogo any more than Fogo understands us. But if the management, who are qualified, can answer these, why can't they? And why wouldn't they want to?
Fair question. So the Flanders is in dry dock right now, right?
Correct, since September 15th.
Yeah. I appreciate the time, Verna.
It just went to dry dock. It wasn't in dry dock. It was in the water. And they pay every day for that.
That they do. I appreciate the time. I got to get to the news break, but stay in touch.
Thank you. Have a great day, Patty.
You too. All the best. Bye-bye. Yeah, and you've mentioned ferries. And now what we understand to be a better understanding by the government of the fiscal reality, I guess it does beg questions about the pledge to build 4 ferries here in this province to be used on what runs we don't know, what size and capacity of ferries we don't know that either. But that was one of the pledges made, is that the government would build 4 ferries in this province for use in this province. There's they've gone to market looking for potential additional, what would be a swing vessel. And that's a tricky thing to satisfy too, because not every run is created equal or has the same needs. And not every dock can handle every single ferry either. So what they actually mean by that, I'm not entirely sure. But let's get a break in for the news. When we come back, a couple of segments left for you. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 1. Rex, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing okay, thank you. How about you?
That's duct tape and 3-in-1 is not doing the job anymore, but I'm still plugging along. But anyway, I called you some time back about where's the labor laws to protect the working class and stop the abuse on injured workers by big companies and WSIB. Anyway, I said to you back then, how you lose the benefits at age 65, but you're still left to deal with the injuries. I just found out also that, okay, I'm going to lose the benefits, so I'll apply for my CPP disability. Well, at the age of 65, you no longer qualify for disability.
Why not?
You got to be under age 65 is one of the qualifications.
I see. Okay, right.
Right?
Yeah.
And another thing, you had a woman call in after that, said, she got injured, she's off work, she had nothing coming in. So I felt for that woman because I went through the same thing myself. Like, I got injured, and I had nothing coming in for 26 weeks. Lucky I never lost everything and ended up in the street. But anyway, this is the game, like big companies and WSIB got going. Like, you get up, you're not capable of going to work, so you phone in injury work-related. Well, you don't rely on getting a call from the company. Oh, what's going on? So you tell them. Anyway, he says, okay, well, after you see the doctor, if you want to come in, we got modified duties for you. Like, it's a miracle. Like, I'm sitting here in the doctor's office. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm waiting to see the doctor. But, you think you know just what I'm capable of doing. So if you can't make it in, if you can make it into work, do you have to pay you for the day? But if you don't go in, the company is off the hook. Then it goes to WSIB, and D says, oh, your employer have modified for you, but you refused it, so we're not paying you. This is the game that's going on.
Rex, how long ago were you injured on the job?
I got injured in 2019, June of 2019.
And what type of injury did you suffer, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I developed tendonitis in both shoulders, and I got what they call carpal impaction in both wrists. The cushion is gone between the little bones in your wrists.
And is recovery working at all?
No, it's just getting worse. And despite what my doctor said, despite what I said, I was accused of just trying to get the summer off work when I bought in restrictions, right? So anyway, 20 years next to perfect attendance there, and when I bought into restrictions, that's what the nurse accused me of. And anyway, despite what I said, my doctor said, they sent me to see their doctor, a surgeon, who also put me off work. And I started seeing his physio group. In the first 3 visits, I met up with 8 other associates who wasn't there half the length of time I was, wasn't half my age, all similar injuries. So that'll tell you something.
Absolutely. And my subject line here says, stigma of being an injured worker. Is that something that you said to Dave, Rex?
No.
Okay. Just curious, because if that was something, I was just going to see what that actually meant for you.
No. And anyway, so, when their doctor put me off, I phoned WSIB back. And anyway, I said, did you review the new medical documentation? And she says, yeah. She said, I did. Oh, she says, that's hereditary, so we're not approving your claim. Right after working physical work all my life, all of a sudden I was born like this. So anyway, it was thanks to the Office of the Worker Advisor that I finally got my my claim approved. But, you go through, the abuse doesn't stop there. This work transitioning, that's another form of abuse there, because they're just trying to force you on a reduced rate. Like Dee said to me, he says, oh, you're capable of doing entry-level jobs. Oh, they offered me a computer course with Dragon software. Well, that's not the type of work I do. I work physical work all my life. I'm not a computer person. But no, she would keep phone back. She didn't want to hear me say I was interested in the computer course. She would go back to over and over, oh, most people don't want us to bother them. They'll say, put me on a reduced rate, I'll find my own job. But every time I would say I was interested in the computer course, this is what she'd go back to. So anyway, I ended up having to pay $1,100 myself after I won my case to hire a WSIB lawyer just to have the satisfaction to say to her when she called me, if you got any questions on my file, I have a representative now. You call her. Just to try. And then on top of it, regardless, they will get you on the reduced rate because there's nothing to protect the injured worker. And they will get you on the reduced rate eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't seem to work as it's intended to, because nobody wants to get hurt on the job. And if a doctor has deemed you too injured to resume your actual job, whether it be physical work or otherwise, I mean, that should kind of be the end of it. And then it even gets more tangly for folks who want to appeal some decisions made at workplace, because they don't even hit their own self-imposed timelines for the turnover for appeals. So it's amazing to me. We used to have a lady who called as an advocate for injured workers here on the program fairly frequently, and that hasn't happened for quite a long time here now. But Rex, anything else while we have you this morning?
No, that's about it. That's about it, Patty. I know. I was off 26 weeks on the dead. Didn't have any income coming in. My company called me and said, "We want you here for a meeting. So you don't have a union there. So what choice do you have?" I go down. I'm sitting in a little box room off the main office. 3 of them on one side of the table, me on the other. They're looking at me saying, "It's our meeting. We talk. You listen." So anyway, they started off. They said, "WSIB denied your claim. Your absence from work is unsupported. We offered you modified, and you declined it." And I went to say, because it wasn't suitable modified, and they went, "Shh, we're not finished." So I sat there and let them finish, but they thought I was coming in unprepared. So anyway, I sat there and let them finish, and when they finished, I pulled the binder at the bag with all my medical documents in individual clear plastic sheets, opened up to the 14-page specialty doctor report with the list of limitations and precautions. I said, "You read that." And he said, "What's this?" I said, "That's your specialty doctor report." I said, "Don't you have that?" And Dee said, "No, can we have a copy of yours?" I said, "Sure." I said, "You can see now, elbows at the side, wrists in the neutral position." I said, "You knew the modified you're offering wasn't suitable modified." I said, "But you offered it anyway." And I said, "That's harassment on your part." And when I said the H word, the arms went up in the air.
Yeah, no doubt. I got to get going, Rex, but I hope you're doing okay.
Yeah, well, you can't sleep at night. You get in bed and everything starts flaring up, and you're like a rotisserie chicken because you can't get comfortable no how.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, unfortunately.
You're up half the night, because you're in pain.
Yep.
And, like I said, at age 65, you're still left to deal with the injury, but they're off the hook. Like, you look at...
I understand. I do have to get going. 5 more seconds.
Yeah, just one question. Talking about this home invasions. Like, if you do anything to protect yourself, you can be charged. How can big companies run you beyond your limits day after day to the point where you get injured and you can't do nothing about it?
It's a fair question and a big one at that. I do have to get going, Rex. Take good care. Thanks for the call.
Okay, Patty. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, Patty. I want to just express an opinion. I'm not taking any blame or anything else, okay?
Sure.
Just my opinion.
Yep.
Well, recently we had a physician who was suspended, and if you read the paper, you read it's about money. It sounds about money, right? It compares one year's salary to another. To me, that implies it's about the money. Okay. Now, he was not suspended by Medicare, and Medicare, NCP, is the people that look after money. So he was suspended by the NLCPS, right, which is the Newfoundland and Labrador College of Physicians and Surgeons.
That's right.
Correct. Now, their mandate, I don't think, is to go auditing spending. I think their mandate's got to do more with practices and qualifications and licensing, and to see that the job is being done properly. Not accusing anybody of anything wrong, but here's my point. I think that the onus is on the NLCPS to let the people of Newfoundland know that the work they had done by that specific doctor is true work, and you need not worry. Because if I had work done by that particular doctor, who everybody knows, and all of a sudden I get to blink fast, or I get water in my eyes, or I get a funny look and feeling or a quiver, I'm going to say to myself, I wondered, was that done right? Did I have it done at all? What? So until the NLCPS tells us this got nothing to do with that doctor's practice, you can rest assured what you had done is properly I don't feel comfortable. And that's all I wanted to say.
And I think it's a fair point, and it's the point that I made when the story first broke, and it was reported initially by All Newfoundland Labrador. We have no idea why this doctor was suspended.
No, we have no idea. So that's exactly it. Look, if it's money, send it to the RCMP. And assure us that the work we had done is good. And I have no reason to believe it's not, because this man was very, very well qualified, according to what we're told.
Well, absolutely. His academic background and training was top notch. So you make an excellent point. For folks who had work done by Dr. Harry Dang, if they're actually worried about the basis for this suspension, it's a fair question. I don't know when we're going to hear from the college, but they do owe people an explanation.
Yes, they do owe people an explanation. And otherwise, you might get people going back to a doctor saying, look, I had this done and it's not improved. Did I have it done? Did I have it done right?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just my opinion. And look, thank you for listening to me.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's a fair point, because I know why we lean in on the billing, because it's extraordinary. In year number one, he billed just over $700,000. Year number two, almost $5 million. So I guess that's why the reporting worked the way it did, but we have no idea why he's suspended. Let's go to line number one. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hi there.
Patty.
Hiya.
Would you mind repeating what you were talking about when someone asked about what money and how much that we're going to get in January? Someone said something about $1,500, and I thought, I don't know nothing about it.
Right. For those who qualify for the provincial program called the Newfoundland Labrador Seniors Benefit, which will be paid out quarterly, if people are eligible, and eligibility for it is. So whether it's a single or a couple, seniors with a net family income of up to $30,000, just over $30,000, they qualify for the maximum benefit, which is $1,551 over the course of the year. Both those numbers have increased recently. So that's the basics of it. Now, there's a floating target from $30,000 all the way to $43,300, so you'll get a reduced benefit, but the maximum is $1,551. It comes out quarterly, same time you get your GST, and it is administered by the Canada Revenue Agency.
Okay. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas to you and David and all your family.
The very same to you. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, likely final word goes to line number two. Gerald, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Morning.
So you must find your job very frustrating, do you?
Sometimes.
Yeah, because apparently we from what my observations on the call, we don't have a functioning province. We have a province, but it's not functioning properly. And that's if the evidence that has the calls that you're getting about the number of frustrations and things that aren't operating well. And it seems that the root cause is a lack of accountability. It seems that there's nobody accountable for anything in this government,
I think that's a fair observation. And, we'll talk about accountability every 4 years and an opportunity to vote for a different party or a different candidate. But accountability should roll a little further down the org chart. A lot of the power and the knowledge about different government operations are in the heads and the hearts of the senior bureaucrats. And most of them are nameless and faceless. We never get to ask them anything. It all is the responsibility of the minister, but an awful lot of government operations is well below the ministerial level.
And I think this province is in dire financial position, and there's people that are accountable for that. The politicians that we have elected, all the premiers, they are accountable. They brought the province to the state. We're on a financial precipice, and the Premier Fiore brought in the what's her name? Dame Green, Moya Green report.
The Premier's Economic Recovery Team, Moya Green. Yep.
Yep. And yesterday on the economic update, we were the focus of that event was can you fulfill the promises that you've made? That's what you're elected. Will you be able to borrow more money to fulfill these promises that you've made. When the focus should be, why aren't you addressing the 800-pound gorilla in the room right now, which is the debt that's going to sink us?
I don't disagree. I talk about debt and deficits fairly frequently here on the program. So, I mean, I don't know where we go from here. I mean, it's not that long ago when Dwight Ball was the Premier, the thought was we couldn't even borrow long-term anymore, and there was a risk of not hitting payroll. And here we are continuing to add to the debt.
Sorry. We all know about the debt. But the thing is, the Premier should be now called to account why he is not what's his name, Craig Party and Lloyd, sorry, not very well, Lloyd Party, to come on and say why they are not implementing this remedy for the financial position that we're in. And someone needs to be held accountable. But the accountability in this case belongs with the Premier and the Cabinet. To come on and say why we are taking all the accumulated debt and passing it on to our grandchildren. I'm not very well this morning. I'm not getting this across very well, but I think it's of paramount importance that this be explained.
I agree. I'm getting your point. I understand loud and clear.
Like I said, in your program, I don't know how you can take the psychological strain of the frustration that people call him day after day with his complaints, and there's no one accountable for it. You can take what you like, all the snafus that have happened in the last 10 years. You can make a list of them. I can't take them out of my memory, but you make a list of them, and there are hundreds. And there's no one being held accountable. There's no one being fired, laid off, or brought to discipline. No one
certainly
knows the name.
Nobody that we know about anyway, for the most part. Gerald, we just cleared 12 noon, but I appreciate making time for the show. Thanks for doing it.
You're welcome. Bye.
Take good care. Bye-bye. All right, good show today. We will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Beeline FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.